A couple years ago, I realized that I really liked these soap ASMR videos. I don't even know where it began, but it's like soap where they're washing the soap. That's what they call it, where they're like doing lots of suds, or and I mean without a sponge. And then there's some that are with a sponge that are like with Lysol and that sort of thing. Those aren't my favorite, but I also really like the cutting of soap, and this was before I even knew what a picky pad was. I was just perusing Instagram and just found this niche. And I'll tell you what drew me to the niche of soap ASMR. It is the repetition, number one. I really like repetition, I always have. It's number two, you know what to expect. Like, I know, especially with certain creators, exactly how they format their videos are exactly the same. They open the soap, they tap the soap, they put the soap in the water, and then they start washing it with their hands for a certain amount of time, and then they start using a sponge to really make the suds. You get it. And there's something about this with how I'm wired, how I'm made, that I love it so much. It is so calming. I love the sound. I love how it looks. I wish I could smell it. I know it would smell really good. It's a full sensory experience, except for tasting. We should not be eating soap. But besides taste, it's like a full sensory experience. And I remember my husband and I had gone on vacation, and we were on a really terrible plane flight in Miami that just was not taking off because of weather. And so we were stuck on this takeoff strip like at midnight for hours. And so the whole plane was dark. And I was watching soap ASMR, and I just felt so like I'm trying to hide my phone because it's glowing in the dark as if I'm watching something inappropriate. I don't know. I feel still, even being 47 years old, I still feel shame. Yeah, I guess that's what it would be. Shame for being different. And I grew up in a very religious house that, now listen, this was the 80s. And so even then, just even mainstream culture did not understand mental health or any sort of neurodivergence. I can never say that word. It just was not understood. And I received like zero help whatsoever. And I always knew I liked these things that were different. And I always knew that I was different. And I always knew that the other kids around me seemed so much more free. And I wish I could be free. I just wasn't free. And I I wanted to change, but I didn't know how to change. And I think that's a really sad place to be, and one that I still struggle with. These things that I like a picky pad, like different sounds and repetition that soothe me, I'm just now able to be a little bit more honest. I remember telling my friend group maybe a year ago of like, hey, I really like this. And, they're laughing with me, and they're fantastic. But I still think there's this sense of like, oh, Melissa's just so quirky. You know how she is. She's just doing it to be quirky. And that's not it. I'm doing it. I mask so much of my quirkiness to remain what appears to be somewhat normal. Although I still don't feel normal, but I think I can appear to be normal if I really try. And even as I'm editing this as I go, so I'm talking a little bit and then stopping the recording, and I'm looking at the audio, and there's these long spaces in between me talking, and that's just my typical normal cadence is a little bit hilted. Um, and I am going to stop, or at least I'm going to try to stop going back to repair and fix those things, because it's just my natural way of speaking is, I think, slightly different than maybe other people's tone or cadence. So I am actively, even at 47, actively working on becoming more like myself. And I'll tell you when really the first time that I understood, like really deeply, I think I had this thought that I would eventually become normal, Like even in my 30s and even in my early 40s, it's like I'm sitting and waiting for the day that I'm going to wake up and just, be able to go to the store like a normal person and be able to be spontaneous like a normal person and be able to do the things that I see other people around me do, that I just needed to try harder, or I just needed to mature a little bit more, and all of this was going to be fixed. If only I just had to give it time. And it was I don't know when. It's been years though, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I started this other YouTube channel, actually, where I talk about the Bible. I really, really, really love the Bible. And I know it's a very nuanced book. It's a book that has been weaponized by certain Christians. I find that abhorrent, with how the book has been mishandled, mistreated people. I don't like that at all. But since I've been a little girl, I've loved the Bible. And so it's a channel where I talk about the Bible. And for the first time in my life, got in front of a camera and did my own editing. Well, the camera would stay on when I wasn't talking. I was just like moving stuff about or reading over a script or looking for something. And as I edited that raw footage and saw myself like as from the outside in instead of from the inside out, it was the first time when I was by myself, so I was completely myself. There was no trying to be normal or to put a mask on so that I didn't stick out. I was just like myself, like it, with all my idiosyncrasies and weird ways of rocking or talking or mumbling or um, making noises or, whatever it is I was going to do. I didn't know I did those things because I've never watched myself. And as I'm watching myself, I'm realizing, oh, if I were to see me, like not be me, but just see me, like see this woman on this screen that I was editing these things on, I would be like, oh, I think something's wrong with her. Like, she's definitely not typical. And that was very eye-opening to me. And I don't know if it was soothing or the opposite of soothing. But I think it was the first time, and this was a slow and gradual process, so it wasn't like I immediately knew, but I think it was the first time that I started to wonder if maybe I would never change, and that actually I was much more different than I would let anyone else see besides my husband. My husband is the only person, we've been married 26 years, that I can fully be 100% of myself around. Like I have nothing, like fully myself. But besides him, I don't even know how to begin the process of letting it down because, even like eye contact. So I don't love eye contact, never have. If I'm walking, especially like in a crowded place, I will look down at the ground. And the reason for that is not because, well, faces talk to me, and it's so much information at like so quickly, and it's so loud. So especially if somebody's like feeling something, or at least I sense they're feeling something, it is like their face is screaming at me, and I can't think when someone's screaming at me. Now, they're not screaming at me, their face is just talking, and I can hear it, and it's loud. And then when you do that in a crowd with a lot of faces and a lot of energy, it's like taking that all in. It's not that I don't feel it or I can't see emotions or expressions. I can. I think I understand them to some extent, and it's very overwhelming. And so I look at the floor, but I know that people don't like that. They find me unfriendly when I do that, and I don't want to appear to be unfriendly. And so you have all this, there's just this struggle of wanting to not offend people, not stick out, but also be yourself. And I don't understand it. Now, my counselor's the only one that I've told her that her face is like, it talks too much. And I'm just going to be very natural with her by not looking at her face. And it feels so relieving to do that, to be able to just look around the room and talk, or as she's talking. Sometimes I'll look at her. It's harder to look at somebody when I'm talking than when they're talking, because I'm reading their face as I'm hearing their words. It like goes in sync with one another. But when I'm talking, it's like somebody's talking at the same time as I'm talking, and I can't focus. It's too much. It's too much input, and so it's a relief to me, to be able to do that. And she's like, "Well, you know, of course you can do that, and you could do that with other relationships too." And I'm like, "Yeah, but how does it make you feel when I'm looking all around the room?" And she's like, "Well, it doesn't matter how it makes you feel." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it is not socially acceptable. It seems weird and strange, and like, uh, maybe I'm being dishonest, or um, I don't know, like not what people do. People look at each other in the face." So I struggle, because to be myself means that it not only does it go against the norms, but it's so misunderstood that it actually adds more stress than simply masking a bit. But I've realized that, I tell people I'm an extreme introvert. To be able to spend 2 hours with people, like if I have like a Bible study every Thursday night for 2 hours. That's weekly. So for that day, I need to be completely silent for the 12 hours before that happens. Like from the time I get up, I need to be alone until the time I go. I need to be alone, because it takes so much energy to be in a group. And I don't think, if you don't have that experience or understand what that's like, it can be very easy to misunderstand, or to think like, just buck up, or you're being a baby, or like, you need to fix that. Like, that's not, you need to fix that. But what I've been wondering is, I wonder if I have such extreme introversion. Is that a sign of how much energy it takes to mask? I, I think there's probably some truth to that, because I can definitely spend more than 2 hours with my husband and not feel tired at all, because I don't have all of those masking things in place. I don't know. It's just it's confusing on exactly how to navigate. And I've not really done much research in this area, or done much research when it comes to coping mechanisms. I will say, I'm going to, one thing that I do want to do is to start taking picky pads with me, because if my hands can be busy just like they're here now, it is very, very helpful, because it quiets everything else around me. So I'm going to start taking, I haven't had the courage to do it yet, but I want to start taking picky pads with me when I'm going to be in situations like at restaurants, which can be a real struggle. I try to go usually really early, either early lunches like about 11 a.m. or really early dinners like at 4 p.m. Like if somebody wants to go to a restaurant, because it's much less crowded and overwhelming. But so for there, or for meetings that I'll be at, having something to do with my hands and allowing my eyes to look down, I'm fully engaged 100%. And it takes a lot of the pressure off. But it's being it's being able to be a middle-aged woman pulling out a sensory toy and not feel strange. And I know you're probably listening to this and like screaming into your phone that like, I just need to be myself and do whatever that takes. And I appreciate that. Like I appreciate the process of learning how to do that. In our Bible study, I actually lead it. It's called Bible Lab, LAB. Um, we really, like, this is so important to me that we don't make everybody else be where we are or think like we think or come to the same conclusions, or even if we know something is quote unquote the right thing, we don't put that pressure on someone else because they're in their own story, they're in their own process, and we're humans, and this process is not easy. It's much easier to know the right answer in your head than to actually live that answer out. And especially if you're listening to this and you're someone who is able to fully lean in to your differences and display them and, not care what other people think or if it makes them uncomfortable, um, like I really admire you. And also, I think it's important to also leave space for people like me in this area or other people who are not quite there yet and are trying to be, by taking small steps and making movement to be able to be more free in this. So, thank you for listening to my little chat about where I'm at with this. I would love to know in the comments where you're at with it. Like, what have you learned? What has been helpful for you in being yourself? What are you still working on, or what are your goals? I think being in a community that is able to express freely and is really open and does not pressure or push people to be in the same exact place they are. There's so much beauty in diversity and beauty in different places that we each are. We get to learn from one another, and there's nothing I like better than learning. Well, maybe there is, because I think learning on your own is definitely fun, but learning with others, for me, is far more fun because the collective mind is so much deeper, richer, wider, broader, deeper in its ability to experience if we learn from each other. And so I'm a real big fan of that. So I would love to hear in the comments any of your thoughts on this. And yeah, so maybe we can chat there. I'm going to leave you to the rest of this video to just watch in peace and quiet. I will say this is brand new silicone that I love. It is so much softer than what I had been making prior, and so this is about half the hardness. I think it's a 10A instead of 20A, and I absolutely love it. So all of my pads in my shop are now made with this brand new silicone that does not kill your fingers, but still gives you enough resistance to make the picking, where you really have to pull at some of them. So it's the best of both worlds, in my opinion. All right, see you in the comments.